Hi, welcome to this week's Authors Love Readers podcast, where we delve into the stories behind the stories. We're asking authors questions, some of them fun, some of them serious, and from their answers, you're going to learn things you never knew about the people who write the stories you love. My name is Patricia McLinn. I'm your host and designated question asker.
I'm Donna Kauffman, and I'm an author who loves readers.
Now, let's start the show. Hi, and welcome to this week's edition of Authors Love Readers podcast. My guest this week is Donna Kauffman, and we were just saying I was going to tell how long we've known each other, and I decided the number is too big for that year. But we know each other from the Washington Romance Writers, and I will say, in fairness to Donna, I was already a member when she came in, so I've been around longer than she has. But it's been a long time.
I feel so young and refreshed now.
As well you should. You're just, clearly we met when I was a toddler and you were a baby.
Exactly, so. And I was in nappies, right?
Yeah. So tell the listeners a little bit about what you write.
Well, I guess I can't say how many years I've been published, but you can find out. I'm very Googleable. I am currently writing contemporary romantic fiction, maybe borders a little bit on women's fiction. Small town romance. My current series is set here in the Blue Ridge Mountains where I live, and which is something very special to me. But I've written other small town series prior to that, and they seem to be doing really well. And I think there's a lot of people out there who like what I like. So that's a good thing for me.
So have you found over the span of X number of years, mumble number of years, that and from when you first started to now, are you writing about different things? Do you feel your stories have changed necessarily, grown, gone in different directions?
I think they've definitely grown. At least I hope they have. And I might as well just be frank. I've been published for 26 years, so there's a big chunk of my life. And so when I first started, I had just had my second child, and now he's pushing 30. So yes, in that time frame, I've raised children. I've had a lot of life experiences, and all of that I think informs what I write and how I write and the things I choose to talk about. I know a lot more now than I did then. So I think that type of thing has absolutely grown and expanded. As far as the type of stories that I tell, I think that's still in the same realm. I think my voice is very similar now to what it was like then. And the target audience, I think, is pretty much exactly the same. I've done some different things, but by and large, the voice is there. The contemporary romance is still my key, and the type of people that I want to talk about, the type of secondary characters that interest me, those are all the same. I just think that maybe they're better informed now than they were maybe 20 years ago. But it's been nice not to feel compelled to do something that might have pushed me out of my reader's comfort zone. I'm happily right in the pocket where I've always been, and hope I get to stay there for another 26 years. Well, maybe not another 26 years. But only if I get to live forever, then yes.
Keep going, yeah. Yeah. I think there are a number of us who are just going to, kind of drop our head to the keyboard, and that will be it. That will be the way we go out. But I wanted you mentioned voice, and we as authors talk about that a lot. And I think the readers recognize it, and yet it's very elusive. And sometimes I think it's worldview.
Right. I would agree with that. Yeah. I think that it imbues a lot of different things too. I mean, humor is a big part of how I see things personally, as well as that's reflected through my characters. And it's very kind of uplifting, more optimistic. My stuff would never be classified as dark. Even though I have dealt with challenging topics, usually it's in the framework of we're working through this, and where's the pot of gold at the end of the rainbow? How can we get there? So my characters definitely are flawed and have issues, but I'm a very kind of optimistic, some would say rose-colored glass kind of person. So that definitely filters in, and I feel comfortable. So I know what my voice is, but I think when I was saying before about staying in that pocket, a lot of authors, as they grow, very understandably have different life experiences and want to go off, and they have different stories they want to tell that might not be in the same genre that they began in, or a different type of theme in the same genre. And I liken it to, Meg Ryan does romantic comedy movies, and then she suddenly wants to go off and do something serious, and her viewers are like, no, wait, we like you in comedy. And it's not that she can't go be brilliant in something else. And I'm just happy that I never felt compelled to leave. I still feel I am in that same place. The same. My rule is I write the story that I most want to read, and I think I still want to read the same thing. So so I'm happy with that. If I had felt compelled to do something different, I certainly would have gone off and done it. But I'm kind of happy that the stories that come to me are still the same things that have made me happy for a long time, and seem to make my readers happy as well.
Do you have any strong fears? And then do you use those in books if you do have them?
Strong fears. No, I think that's one of the things we were talking about, favorite quotes, the other day, and doing what makes you scared. I think is I've taken a lot of risks in my life, and just made big changes and jumped, and I feel very comfortable with that, even though it scares me at the same time. So I think maybe that's about the only way that I can think in terms of my characters. Also often are in a position in their life where they're faced with making a very big change, and so how they get to that point where they can take that risk might be informed by me. but I can't say fear otherwise drives me. I feel pretty fearless, and I think age has a lot to do with that. I've done it. I've raised my kids. I've built my career. So I'm a lot more fearless now than I might have been, when I had children to take care of or other things to do. So, but I think my characters probably are emboldened in the same way.
Well, that brings us to another question. Was there something earlier in your life that you used to fret over, and now you look at it and go, who cares?
Yes, I don't worry so much about what other people think. I don't worry so much about what I'm supposed to be doing with my life or with my characters, or in publishing, and how in any aspect, because I'm doing well. I mean, and by my standards, and by what makes me happy, and what takes care of my business is great. So why do I stop worrying? It could be whether it's about how you look, how you work, where you live, any of those things. I find, yes, that I used to think about that. I used to be concerned about that when I was younger, and I absolutely am not anymore. So,
and I'm actually a little surprised that you did used to worry about it, because it didn't show. So good for you.
That's nice to know. Yeah, no, there were definitely some very, very big challenges in life. So. It was scary. But and I think too, my mom is very much, she's a very confident person. I feel like I have her confidence. So especially I think when we are confronted with something really challenging or scary or difficult in life, whether it's a health crisis or a family crisis, or, whatever it is that you're grappling with, jobs, finances, it is to put on that bold face, because it's kind of like if you walk the walk long enough, it just happens. It'll happen for you. So my family does tend to, we project confidence, even if what's behind the scenes is absolute chaos. So, which it often was, but because there was a certain sense of, if we can modulate ourselves like that, then eventually it'll become our reality. And oftentimes it's true. It did, but.
Well, and my feeling a lot of times is panicking does no good. Does
Right.
absolutely no good. So, or being, oh, woe is me.
Exactly.
Maybe being confident doesn't do any good, but it has a shot of doing good. So at least,
Right.
keep pushing forward and do it. Yeah.
Well, I think it's not so much confidence that I know I'm going to do it. It's just confidence that I can keep on trying. It's that feeling of, well, I got nothing else to lose at this point, so let's just have at it. I know I can do that. Like, I know I can be persistent. I know I can be, and I don't know what's going to happen at the end of it. So I can't say that I was always confident that I was going to have a positive result or that things were going to work out by any stretch. But I was very confident that my determination and persistence was there. So there's that. I was dogged. So I knew I had that going for me.
So let's go back to how you got hooked on stories. Can you remember particular books or a moment, or were you always, what got you into stories?
Well, I started reading really, really young. I was probably like 3, 4, and so I was a voracious reader. My mom used to just plant me in the library. Was my babysitter, oftentimes my local library, and I would read everything I could get my hands on. So books in general, stories in the broad scope. But I think the first thing I can remember as a younger person, and I might have been 9, 10, 11. So I had been reading for quite a while. But the book that really captured my absolute fascination, and it's interesting because it's time travel, which I've written a little paranormal, but it's a book called Jessamy. The author's name is Barbara Slay. I was able to track down a copy of the book. It's out of print as far as I'm know. And what's really kind of cool is I found it at a used bookstore, and it is a library copy. So that's like the most awesome thing ever. Like, it has the plastic wrapper, so everything about that was just the most amazing thing ever. But yeah, that's what got me thinking about, who thinks this up? Like how did she come to that? So, and that never occurred to me before. And that's what really triggered, I would say, that's what triggered the concept of story, the concept of storytelling.
I think that's a really interesting point of who thinks these up, because I can remember I started reading early too. I have older siblings, and they used to spell to keep secrets from me. So I had to learn words to keep up. But when I can remember reading Misty of Chincoteague, and it's by Marguerite Henry. And Marguerite Henry lived in the town next to where I grew up. She lived in Glen Ellen, Illinois. And I can remember thinking, wait a minute, a real person makes these books? And that was the first sort of concept for me that people did that, as opposed to the stories just sort of appearing, I guess.
Yeah, exactly. It never occurred to me with mysteries. I was too busy trying to figure out who did it. It wasn't until the time travel thing that I went like, well, how? Okay, so you can just do anything, like that just was so mind bending to me.
Isn't that amazing?
So yeah.
So did you used to like watch or listen or read stories did you ever have ones that you didn't like the ending to, and you mentally or actually rewrote it?
It's interesting. As a child, no, because it wouldn't have occurred to me. I had things I liked and didn't like, but I never would have thought, oh, well, if I was doing it, I would have done X, Y, Z. But as an adult, maybe with movies more than with movies and books, but it was like Love Actually. I would make all of them happy. So things like that. So probably for me, it's when a story, whether it's a book or a film or whatever, where I so was rooting for the people, and then it ends badly. That's actually why I write romance for a living, because I don't want it to end badly. Yeah. I want it to end well. I want them to find a way, So if anything, that's what drove me to reading romances and then eventually to writing them, was I want it to work out. I want them to solve the mystery. I want them to save the world, and I want the people to end up together, so that's why I like genre fiction. I think all genre fiction is happily ever after. Romance is happily ever after. The two characters forge a life. Mystery, they solve the crime, and world in science fiction, they save the world. I don't want to get to the end and have it. Well, we don't know who did it. Like, no, that's not actually satisfactory for me. So all genre fiction is appealing to me in that way. And what I like about romance is that I get to explore those other worlds, and I have. You can, like you were saying, you can have mystery with a romance, and you can have paranormal, you can have science fiction, you can have, I suppose someone out there is doing horror. That's one genre I've never gotten into, but it, I like the idea that you can blend worlds, and you can blend worlds even in other genres as well. So if you're writing mystery, you can pull in paranormal, or you can pull in science fiction. It doesn't have to be romance isn't the only genre fiction that allows that kind of flexibility. But I think that's one of the things I like, is that promise of, we're going to work it out, but we're going to take you on one heck of a ride to get you there.
Yes.
So that's
so.
yeah.
I'm skipping around here. What surprising jobs have you held?
Oh, I've done so many things. I was really young when I did all of them, but I was a colorist and a hair colorist. I did some platform work with Vidal Sassoon, as well as locally. I was a dog trainer, and I was a competitive bodybuilder. Not anymore. So I stopped when I started building my two new little bodies, who are now in their 30s, now almost 30. I completely went off the rails at that point, but no, for about 9 years. So that probably comprises, and then it's probably interesting that I'm a romance writer, but
okay.
But yeah.
I have my very own desert island, and it has odd rules in that, and odd abilities. You can play movies there, but you can only play 3 movies.
I love your island.
Only the same 3 movies over and over and over. So which 3 movies are you going to take to my desert island?
Well, first would probably be, it's my very favorite movie, and I've watched it a million times, so I know it by heart. It's a movie with Katharine Hepburn and Spencer Tracy, but it's a little known one of their movies called
I
Desk
know that
Set.
one. Yeah.
It's my Christmas movie. It's my go-to Christmas movie, and nobody's ever heard of it. But and then the other one would be a classic Christmas movie, only because it's very sentimental to my very extended family. We can literally quote the entire film by heart, which is White Christmas, Danny Kaye and Bing Crosby. So that one I could probably. As for the third one, though, I don't know. There's so many that I love. I just don't know if I'm not one for watching things over and over again. The only 2 that I ever watch repeatedly are those every holiday season. Otherwise, it's like there's too many things out there, and I don't have enough time, so I just don't rewatch stuff. I guess it would just be whatever the last person on the desert island left in the DVD player. So
well,
I'd be stuck
I'll tell you,
with,
a number of the authors cheat, so you may get like the whole Star Wars.
There you go. Okay. Okay. Well, if I'm allowed to pick an entire series, yeah. Well, then I want. You know what I want? I want the first Harry Potter movie. That's what I want, because that captured the magic of that visually captured the magic of the books for me in a way that most movies don't. So that I would say, I was going to say Lord of the Rings, but Harry Potter has a really whimsical. It gets really dark after that, but the first one, I really love that. That's all the charm and the wonder and that whole mind bending world creating thing. So that one would be good.
Can you share with us any good advice that you have ignored, and how did that turn out?
Adam's rib.
Thank you. Yes.
Sorry.
Thank you.
It just popped into my head.
Yay.
Yeah. Anyway, I'm sorry. Advice that I wish I had followed.
Good advice you've ignored, and how did that turn out for you?
Good advice I ignored. I don't know. I don't nothing that comes to mind. My parents were pretty good at, if we had a dream, like me telling them I wanted to go off and be a writer or a ballroom instructor or whatever, dog trainer, they were just like, well, you go for it. You'll do well at it. I know you, and so I didn't really, no one ever said, oh, you should do this. Or I guess maybe my teachers were very upset. I did really well in school. I graduated in the top 10 in my class, and we had 1 valedictorian and 6 salutatorians, and then me. So, I know. Darn it. I didn't get to make the speech, but I opted not to go to college. I opted to go to trade school, and then and went off from there. And so my teachers were horrified that I didn't, take the whatever intellect I apparently had and go off and do something with it. And I told him, I said, if I needed a college degree to do what it was I wanted to go off in the world to do, then I'd absolutely have gone and done that. But I didn't. And so in looking back, I regret nothing. I encouraged my kids to go to college, which they did. But I don't feel I missed anything, because whatever experience I would have had there would have canceled the experiences in life I did have, which were also awesome, just in a very different way. And they've absolutely made me who I am, and I like who I am. So who knows what I mean? I can't say what I have is better or worse because I don't know where that path would have led me. Maybe to something equally fabulous and wonderful. So I'm certainly in no way, shape, or form saying it's not a thing you should do, but by any stretch. But it just isn't what I did. And when you were talking before about what makes make you afraid, or what if things that you think back on that you think maybe other people were very concerned that I wasn't going to school, but I was never concerned. So, but that's probably the biggest surprise that, and the biggest thing of advice that people give me. And they ask me, "Are you ever going to go back?" No, don't think I'm good. So
I think in a lot of ways, being an author is an education too.
Oh, absolutely, it's an amazing education. I love the kind of learning that I get. I research and as much as possible go to the places where I set books and learn about the occupations of the people, and I come to that because there are things that interest me. So then I find a way to develop a story where I get to utilize these things that I want to know about. So I know a little bit about a whole lot of things, but not a lot about any one thing. And I'm if you want a killer trivia partner, me. So yeah, it's been an amazing education, just not in the formal interpretation of that. So I wouldn't trade it for anything. Yeah.
Let's talk a little more about research and about how it applies to your books. And when do you do it in the process?
Before, rarely during. Although, so I started researching the Blue Ridge Mountain series that I'm now writing before I actually moved out here, and that was like 5 years ago, because I knew I wanted to set a series out here. I was doing the research and doing the reading and traveling and viewing the place and talking to people. I had no idea what story I wanted to tell. I just knew I wanted to tell something there, so I kind of immersed myself in it as much as I could. And then when I moved out here was when the story came to me. So same thing. I was in Savannah last year for a good chunk of time because there's a series that I want to set there. And that'll happen eventually. So I think what I like to do is to go sink in as much as I can to the location, if that's the thing, or sink in terms of the occupation. Sometimes it means going and taking classes in that, or being around somebody who does it for a living, or in whatever aspect it is that you want to research it. But then when I'm actually writing the story later, and it can be a year later or many years later, I have those resources to tap back into. And it may mean traveling back there again, and it may mean contacting people and saying, okay, I know I asked you XYZ, but what I need to know is PDQ. So can you tell me blah, blah, blah. So that establishes those kinds of contacts. So while I'm writing, I absolutely touch base with a lot of the research, but I'm not actively like diving into it for the first time while I'm writing it. That would be too much. I need time to let it all kind of percolate.
So that dive-in period, are you doing that while you're writing something else, or
yes.
do you? Okay. Yeah. And how do you keep those things compartmentalized in your?
I think what's and you probably have this experience. A lot of authors that I know have this experience, is when you're dying to tell this story. You just can't wait to tell this story. And then when you actually start telling the story, it's really hard.
Yes.
And thinking it up and figuring it out and all those things are really challenging. And there are many, many times where you question why you thought this was a great idea. And you really want to do that next story that is going to be so much easier. So the research gives me that outlet of, see, this is going to be great. So, and then I have to, go back to working when I'm working. But it also allows me to get that out of my head, so that I don't, when I sit down to work, I'm not thinking, oh, if I could just go off and do something else. Well, you are off doing something else and you've done it. So get back to work, so it helps me. It gives me that outlet to get that out of, get that done so you can get back to work, Missy, So,
yeah.
So it's not too hard. And I kind of like the idea of sinking back. Plus it's such a different thing. I mean, you're usually reading galleys from a book you wrote a year ago, and you're researching something you want to write 2 years from now. And there's so many things layered in this business all the time anyway. So that's not that unusual. And I kind of almost feel relieved when I get to dive back into this world that I control, because I don't control any of the rest of it. So, and I get to just be in that place where I get to make all the rules and make everything work the way I want it to work. And it's something of a relief. So the balance is kind of fun, actually.
And that comes back to a question that a reader asks, and I will read how she asked the question, and then I want to connect it to something else. And she says, "Where do your stories come from? I know one author who dreams her stories, another has a character suddenly taking up residence in her head. So, how are your beautiful stories born?" And you talked about doing research in a place and getting the feel for the place and then finding the story. So, how do you find the story?
It's there's so many elements. Like I know of locations that really intrigue me and that I think would be a wonderful character to the book. I don't want my settings to be generic. I really want them to be specific and add to the whole, imbue the whole story with a feeling, with a smell and a scent and a place. So I have to be there to smell it and see it and live it.
Mm-hmm.
But then the characters are a whole separate thing. It's like, so first of all, who's going to live here? Who would be here? What, why would they be here? Did they grow up here? Did they end up here? And then there's occupations. I am absolutely fascinated with what people do with their lives. And so I have a whole list of occupations that are fascinating to me. And so would one of those work? Would this happen? Well, what if he's this? And what if she's that? And what if, and so, and sometimes the puzzle pieces all fall into place. And then other times like, no, and I just have to let them all sit for a while because that's not the story yet. Like it needs to be that story that's like, oh, that's exactly the story I need to tell here. But setting is huge for me. And especially I would say in the last 10 years or so, the last 4 or 5 different series that I've written. When I got into doing like small town or settings type series, that became a really big deal. And then what everybody did in the town was fascinating to me. And the different places have a very different set of people doing very different things. I have a series set on the coast of Maine, very different than the one set off the coast of Georgia. So the types of businesses they would have, the types of things they would be doing, and in the Sugarberry Island, the Cupcake Club series, which is set off the coast of Georgia, they're rescuing sea turtles. Up in Maine, they're fishermen. So the setting absolutely has a lot to do with what people do and who they are. But the stories, they're restoring lighthouses, and the research for all of those things was the best thing ever. But so yeah, so it's just like one thing triggers another, or it doesn't. And I've gone to places that I'm dying to set a book and nothing is working. Like the place is working. I love the place, but like that's not working. This isn't, look, I don't know. And I don't want to just generically stick people in because you're in Maine and he should be a lobster fisherman. Well, okay, but that's not doing it for me. So I have to wait until something else. And then when I ended up getting to go stay in a lighthouse that was being restored in Maine, and I'm like, bingo, well, there we are. But it's not the hero; it's the heroine who is a restoration specialist. So it's just different things. Different. You have to just allow it to happen. It comes from so many different things. It's I have a base list, and then I'm off to the races. And oftentimes the base list has never actually been touched, but it's a starting point. Well, what if he's this and what if she's that? Okay, that's not working. But then it just goes from there.
Do you outline, or are you a pantser? Do you just start writing?
Oh, I'm such a pantser. If I outlined everything, then I wouldn't want to tell the story because then I'd know it. I need to tell me the story. Yeah, I need to tell me the story while I'm writing it. And I'm very serious about that. I write the book I most want to read. I write the thing that I'm dying to read. And it may take me a while to figure out all the things that I really want to know. But I tell it the way that I would most want to read it. And I'm just so deeply, deeply gratified that there's a bunch of people out there who want to read what I like, so because I wouldn't know how else to do it. I could never write a book thinking, well, I hope I'm writing this book because I think my readers will love it. I'm writing this book because I want to love it. And then I just cross my fingers and hope that they all want to read the same thing, because that's the only way I know how to do it. If I tried to write something for my readers are vast and wonderful and amazing and very different. Yeah. Writing a book for one would be automatically excluding all the others. And so I just write for me and hope everybody comes to my party. It's like, that's kind of, and they do. And so I've been blessed with this lovely career. If they didn't, then I'd had to go find something else to do for a living, because, that's how it is. That's how it works.
What is your favorite place to write? and why? Does it have an inspirational view?
Yes, it does. A couple of different things actually. When I moved out to the mountains, I had this the first house that I got had this really great room. It was a room off of the master bedroom, and I guess it was meant to be maybe like a nursery,
Oh,
but I turned it into my like little writing. I bought this big, huge, oversized chair that has like the ottomans, like all one big piece. We call it it's like the writing cave, but it's this big chair. And then I just put things in the room that were joyful. And then there's a huge big picture window, and it looked out over the woods, so it was visually beautiful, and it was just this little, but it was like my little pod,
oh.
like my little writing pod. You could just go in there, and it kind of closed out the world. There was no TV, no, nothing else, no phone, no whatever. So I love that. And it was a happy place. It was a really joyful place. The things that I put in there were meant to kind of inspire and to make me happy. But when I moved to the house I'm in now, the view here is spectacular, and the view is of the mountains. And so I live very close, right off the Blue Ridge Parkway
Mm.
and the Appalachian Trail. And so laptops are an amazing thing. And my Mini Cooper is now my mobile pod. And so I write at home, and I still have my big writing chair, and I love sitting here and working. But oftentimes, working where you live, you need to get out of the four walls, and so you don't procrastinate. You know what? If I just go fold the socks, then I know I'm going to think up the next scene. If I'm out in my car, I can't do that. Plus, I can't be on the internet, and I can't be doing other things. So I will hop in my car and pop up to the ridge and sit in the overlooks. And I've written many a book since I've moved out here, sitting up, looking out over the Blue Ridge. It's not only is it very inspiring, but it cuts me off from distraction. So it forces me to work a little bit better. But yeah.
If you could write a book with any other author, alive or dead, who would you want to work with and why?
Wow. I don't, I don't, I wonder how I could work with another author, how they could work with me. It's not something I've ever been compelled, compelled to want to do. It's it's such a scattershot, weird process, like how that seems like it would have to be organized. Like, I don't know.
Organized.
Yeah, that would have to be, we'd have to actually like figure out how to work together. That would be really weird. But as far as like who, gosh, I think, and this seems so obvious, but honestly, and quite sincerely, I don't write. I have written a few paranormal type things back in the day, and I don't even read a lot in the fantasy realm. But I'm very fascinated by how people think that up. I'm very fascinated by what the process is, where they get to that. And because I have dabbled in it and I have written it and I have very much enjoyed it, it's just not my basic milieu. I didn't have that many stories apparently to tell. Someone like Tolkien or J.K. Rowling, or someone who has developed worlds, and very specifically Lewis Carroll. That's who I would want to be with. I would want to with Alice in Wonderland. I collect Alice in Wonderland actually, and copies of it. Like, just how did you get there? Where anyway. Maybe not Lewis Carroll, because I know some of the stories. So maybe not him. But now that I think on it, maybe I don't want to know Lewis Carroll very well. Now, but that kind of concept of what made you go off into that direction, and I'm very intrigued by it. So intrigued by it that I did try my own hand at it, and it's like I said, it's just not how my mind generally works, but I'm absolutely fascinated by those who do have that kind of mindset. So that would be fun.
Yeah, and clearly from how you reacted to Jessamy as a child,
Exactly. Yeah.
that lights up your imagination. That's really wonderful. Another reader asks, if you miss the characters when you finished a book with them.
Oh, absolutely. That's why I write series. So I don't have to give them up right away. Absolutely. And it's so hard. It's so hard to decide like when to end, so, and I know when I'm supposed to end in terms of what makes sense. I don't mean financially, but I mean in terms of the attention span, I guess, of readers, and like leave them wanting more instead of just running it, into the ground. And so, but they do want more, and I want more, and so it's really hard because well, can we just do like one one more set, like, because I still have people I want to talk about, and they're still out there really loving this series. And so can we maybe just push it a little bit further? And then other times I'm like, no, okay. I never feel like I've said all I have to say. I always leave the door open. I always leave me wanting more, I guess, is what's important. I always end it when I still want more, because maybe someday I'll go back, and I may never go back, and I probably won't go back, but I know I can, and that's makes me happy.
Mm.
So yeah,
To leave that open. Yeah.
so I
That
don't ever
makes
want to
total
shut. I don't
sense.
like to shut a door. Yeah, it's like, I know it's wise, right now, to go ahead and move on to something different, but boy, I would love to. And there's characters in every series I've ever done that I would go back and explore. So, given the chance, and that's good, and that's a good thing. You want to be, well, whatever happened to so and so? Well, and you never know. You never know. I say that all the time. Like, I know I'm not going to go back. Like, but I think I could, someday.
So one reader asks, how much does it bother you to find editing errors after your book goes live? And the other reader, saying that it's a pet peeve of hers, asks, when the cover image doesn't match the character description, how does that feel for the author?
Well, for the first part, I stuff happens, so I don't get really aggravated about it. But mostly my feeling about the typos shocks me, because if you knew how many sets of eyes went through this, how did we miss it? Like, that's what bends my mind. I can't get too worked up over it. It happens, and hope people can. I mean, obviously, if it was riddled with something, that would be awful. It'd be horrifying. But if there's one thing in there. But back in the day, before it's done digitally like it is now, there's not now. It's a rare thing. But back when we used to mark up literally a physically printed manuscript, and I would mark all over it, and she would mark all over it, and the copy editor marks all over it, and 16 people have marked all over it, and then it literally goes off to a typesetter who just looks at all these marks. He doesn't read the book for content, he or she. They just go through and take all these little, delete this, move this over here, and do this over here, and make this change, and change this little letter, make this a capital, and add a period, and take out the comma. And they set all this in literal typesetting. The chances of it being horrifyingly were huge, and then later on we would get a printout of what the typesetting looked like. And we would have to go in and fix all of these erroneous things, of which there were many. And there were many sets of eyes on it, but we all knew the story. And so we think we would miss things. But there was so many things to catch that it wasn't that startling, really, that we would miss some, because you're so busy catching so many things. Now, we all work on a digital copy, and there's still a quote unquote typesetter who has to go in and take all of our comments and actually do that to the book, and then put it into book format and so forth. So things can happen, but significantly less opportunity for that to happen than used to be back in the day. So, but now I think partly it reads so clean that you're just going right through it, and I know what it's supposed to say. So, yes. We do miss things occasionally. I have to say, at least it's ever come to me, it's really, really rare. Really, really rare. So I think it would be annoying if it was a constant thing, and I would try to wonder, like, why aren't we fixing this? Why aren't we catching all this? But honestly, I don't think it's. I think it's even my galleys now are pretty clean. Most of the changes that I'm sending back are things that I want to change, more than their actual typos or incorrections. But the other part of it, the cover art, that's an enormous pet peeve of mine too. And obviously, as an author, you always want the cover to reflect the picture you have in your head. One of the ways that I have found to work around that and to work to make that better, I send a significant file of images to my publisher, who welcomes them, who wants them. And so they know what I'm thinking, what I'm seeing, and what I want, and what, and I have no idea where they're going to go with it. It could just be scenery. It could be people. It could be, like, who knows what they're going to do. But here's all of the things. These are all so many things, as many things as I can possibly throw at them. I send it all there, so they have some groundwork, because the people doing the artwork haven't read the story, because they're making the art while I'm writing it.
Sure.
So they have no idea. They have nothing to go on except for the little, the synopsis. And so if I send them a whole folder full of imagery, then they're like, oh, okay, this is how she visualizes this. That helps them significantly, because what else do they have? I mean, they really have very little to go on. So you can hammer at them, but at the same time, and they may be limited by, they can only use digital art, or they can only use, whatever. So depending on what your marketing budget is and that kind of thing. So I do understand their side of it, and I feel for that. I try to mitigate it where I can. And you still get cover art that comes your way, of course there's cover art that comes from a lot of other sources that I have no contact with. My large print books, foreign copies, none of those people are asking me for for my advice. So that could the first the book with the lighthouse was Pelican Point, was the first book in the Blueberry Cove series set in Maine. And the lighthouse is the focal point of the story. They're restoring it. It's very, very detailed. It's the visual of that is not generic, in the story. It's very specific. And as it turns out, they had someone do a painting of for the cover. And it was a stunning painting, but it left them with very little they could do digitally to alter it. And the painting was gorgeous, but had absolutely nothing whatsoever to do in any way, shape, or form with what I had. So because it was the launch book of a big new series, I was so determined to have the reader not get yanked out by this absolutely positive. It was square. It was, I can't possibly tell you how many ways this was nothing like anything that so I went in and I actually rewrote chunks of the book and altered it to fit that, so that when people got that book, it would all work together. And it wasn't, and it worked. I did it in a way that I was happy with. I didn't compromise. I was very happy with how it all worked out. So that was fine. So it came out in trade paperback, and it was beautiful, and people loved it, and it was great. Well, then a year later, it comes out in mass market, and they knew I was really unhappy. They knew that I was unhappy that I had to go back and do it. They knew that I really, as beautiful as the painting was, that I really wish that they had done something in the realm of what I had written. So to make me happy, when they did the mass market, they gave the mass market the cover that with the lighthouse that I originally wrote. And I'm like, but
now
I changed it. It doesn't. It's not that lighthouse anymore. And then they made it the wrong color. And then I got letters from people who said, there's no lighthouses that color in Maine. I'm like, yes, I know. And trust me, look at this other cover. And then every cover that book has at least 8 covers from different countries and different printings and different, large print and whatever. And every single one has a completely different lighthouse on it. So I just had, I made a decision that I will never rewrite a story ever. But I just didn't want readers to be disappointed with that the very first way they could ever immerse into the story was with that cover. And so I won't do it again, but so it happens, it's but at the same time, like the covers that for this series are so spectacular and so the best thing that I've ever seen that it just fills your heart. So it's a part of the business that is business, and you do have to understand that they're working under so many constraints that you can't impact, and at the same time, so find ways that you can as best as you can. But then also remember, once you get outside of that little box, everybody else the audio books for my current series, in the past they've always just used the same cover, but now I'm with a different audio company and they did whole new covers. They're stunning, they're breathtaking, I love them. But I had no idea, and I got these, I'm like, oh my god, that's beautiful, but wow, I had no, so I hadn't, and they gave me approval kind of after the fact, but I don't know what would have happened if I had said I didn't love them, but they were gorgeous, so I did. But I didn't. That surprised me. So now I have a whole different cover view for this too. So you kind of can't get too wedded to it because there's so little that you have control over, and you have to understand that the marketing steps in and they say, well, blue covers are selling. Okay, so we're gonna set this in the springtime, even though the book is set in the wintertime, because winter is white and this spring is blue, and we need blue skies, and you just have to get over it. There's only so much you can, but I do appreciate where the reader is coming from, because I too, it makes me absolutely insane as a reader when it doesn't match up. But
Okay, for somebody who has never read any of your books, can you pick a title or two that would be a good entry point for them, a good introduction to get a feel for your work?
I would recommend the current series. It seems to be resonating with such a broad spectrum of people, which is really deeply gratifying to me as a writer. And the letters I'm getting and the things that people are saying, it makes me incredibly happy and gratified, because it's something that's so special to me as well. And so to find people connecting to it on so many different levels. So I would recommend, the title of the book is Blue Hollow Falls. which is also the title of the series. But that's the first book in the series, and see what they think. You can dive in. One of the things I absolutely want to recommend is go to your local library and go to the K section and look up Kauffman. And if pick any of them actually from there. But it's a great way to try a new to you author without any investment other than your time, and it gives you an opportunity to go to the library, which is a wonderful place to be. But and if you don't see it, you can ask, and they'll usually order it as well. And same in audio. Most libraries have my audiobooks as well, which is a really cool thing. So I recommend that always to readers.
The longtime editor in me says Kauffman with a double F.
Yeah, Kauffman with a double F. Yeah, K with a K, and then the double F. But
we'll have it's in the show notes for folks. So do you have any books that you feel like even your loyal readers might have overlooked? I think of these as, depending on my mood, I either think of them as hidden gems or redheaded orphans.
Redheaded orphans, yeah. What people, because I have for so long written pretty straightforward contemporary romance. I've set them in different countries. I have books set in Scotland. I have books set to Scotland's a huge thing for me, but there's not a lot of contemporary Scottish romance, and some mine are, which is kind of fun. And there's little bits of hints of magic and things like that show up in my books from time to time. But as I mentioned earlier, back in the day, I did dive in and do some paranormal books. And I was kind of a little ahead of my time. My publisher at the time was Bantam, and they didn't really know what to do with them, but they loved them. But they were like, well, I don't, because they kind of made them look like historicals, but they're contemporaries, and we don't really know. And so we all just kind of, I wrote the stories I really wanted to write, and we all happily went back to doing contemporary stuff. And they are contemporary. There's some futuristic stuff in there, but those are my redheaded stepchildren, I think. And when I have readers that stumble across them, they're always so delighted, like, oh, I never knew you did that. And I'm like, well, I loved it. It was great fun. It's just that we all agreed that maybe it just wasn't the right time. Well, and they did well enough. But the one I would say to go find would be called The Legend McKinnon.
Okay, great. And now we're going to do my very favorite part. This is rapid fire, either or. Okay. Binge watch or make the watching last as long as possible.
Binge.
Okay. Cruise or trekking vacation?
Trucking.
Appetizer or dessert?
Dessert.
Ice cream or cake?
Ice cream.
Spring or fall?
Fall.
Leggings or sweats?
Sweats. Nail
polish or bare nails?
No polish.
Sailboat?
I mean, that's no polish, not nail polish.
Yeah, no, bare nails.
Makeup free. Yeah.
Sailboat or motorboat?
Motorboat.
Mustard or ketchup?
Ketchup.
Winter Olympics or Summer Olympics?
God, that's so hard. Winter.
Now, some people are like, I have to pick an Olympics? Not too many, but I say yes, you have to. Coffee or tea?
Tea.
Cat or dog?
Dog.
Hot air balloon or train trip?
Train.
Daisies or roses?
Daisies.
Hiking boots or cowboy boots?
Hiking boots.
Pickup or sports car?
God. A pickup with a sports car on the trailer hitch.
I thought you were going to make it through the whole list.
Yeah, no, truck. It would be truck. Yeah.
Okay. House decorating or gardening?
Gardening.
Paper plates or best china?
Paper plates.
Day or night?
Night.
Opera or show tunes?
Show tunes.
Grab the best first, and this is the last one for you. Grab the best first or save the best for last?
Save the best for last.
Well, this has been terrific, Donna. It's wonderful to catch up with you, and I'm sure that the listeners will enjoy this greatly. And all of you folks, come back next week for the next episode, meet a new writer and the stories behind the stories. In the meantime, have a great week of reading.
Thanks so much for having me. I really appreciate it. It was great talking to you.
That's the show for this week. Hope you enjoyed it, and thank you for joining Authors Love Readers podcast. Remember, you can always find out more about our guest authors in the show notes, and you can find out more about me at www.patriciamclinn.com. You can also send in questions to be asked of future authors at podcast@authorslovereaders.com. Until next week, wishing you lots of happy reading. Bye.